Okay, I think I've unmuted myself correctly this time. Hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we worked on the new Yule Quick Guide feature of the Festival Buddy plugin. And today we're going to work on the French and German versions. I was in such a rush to get anything out the door, especially because I think Sandy was in chat and I knew some other people were looking to try it in English, that I didn't really follow up on whether it was going to work in French or German. So we're gonna work on that today. And then if we have time left over, I'm sure there's more improvements that we're gonna get to. So that being said, there's people in chat. Commodore, hello. There is someone whose name I'm not sure about the pronunciation, but I will start with Effie and say hello, and let me know if that's not right. And Do is in chat as well. Hello. So I'm just here in the neighborhood. I just talked to Wenda to re-up my VIP subscriber town services. If you didn't know, you can use far-ranging Stable Master in the neighborhood, just scrolling down to Festival Grounds, and we will go to Winterhome. Okay, Effie says that's correct. Excellent. The E-I vowel combination in Dutch is more of an I sound, but, you know, that's not universal. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is just refresh our memory on the English version of the quick guide. So we're going to come on over here to Yule and open up the quick guide. And we're going to do this because we're about to do it in German and French, and it's always a little bit nicer to remember. We might not do the whole things, but we'll definitely be looking at a lot of German and French. So it's nice to refresh our memory of what is this thing supposed to be. Here, I'm going to stick it on top of this area over here. So what is it supposed to be? That way, when we do the thing, when we log down with the French or the German client, it's a little bit more familiar to us. He says, yeah, that's your actual name, but in LOTRO you spell it differently to be able to use it. Okay, that makes sense. Cool, because in Dutch the IE is more of an E sound. Cool, so the quick guide says, start off by remembering your wrapper. You're going to be sad if you don't have that. Walking over here to the guard and grab those two things. And then if Barrett Noah is there, go ahead and grab that. Now I'm going to go ahead and instead go over to ONK and get this biggest stomach of all. That's really just to pick it up whenever it's available kind of thing. Now it looks like someone was just through here chasing people off, so no worries. We'll get them as we go. One of the nice things about this list is that it's going to track our objectives no matter what order we do them in. And missing the one that's right by the quest giver is the least of the annoyances, because, you know, you're going to be standing right next to him when you get back. All right, this one is missing. That's okay. We'll go set off some fireworks. Oh, you're Dutch as well, but American-born, says Effie. My cousin was lucky enough to be born in Holland, though. There is an option for citizenship for people, but because it didn't apply to us, I haven't looked into the details. But for us, as immigrants, we have to go through a longer, more involved route if we want to get to citizenship or permanent residency. But being born to Dutch parents, you might get it automatically no matter where you were born. Dave, my patient says, I hate the quest where we have to tell the poor guys to go away. Ah, but I like the quest where we are organizing a revolution, a revolt against the mayor, and we are instructing people to go to the secret hideout to get warm and get some food so they can come out and play act being poor. Move along, comrade. So we just saw Onake saying 10 seconds, everyone. You do not have to be standing near to the table for that timer to count down. As long as you're somewhere in Frostbluff, you'll be fine. Okay, I just went ahead and grabbed the other two while I was there. Heavy says, yeah, I wish I could get citizenship in a few places, to be honest. because I would love to live in different places throughout my life. Yeah, there are definitely some career paths that are a little bit more, make it a little bit easier to, I want to do this in a different order, just turn that on. Make it a little bit easier to jump from one country to another. One of the appeals to us of having a European Union passport is there's a lot of places in Europe that are appealing to us, possibly because we were born in America. And let's see, any magical mystery juice? Nope. Okay. And so, yeah, a European passport seems kind of appealing because, we could go live in Italy, we could go live in France or whatever, or at least stay there for more than 3 months at a time. Okay, Little Redhead was just showing off her technique of just going and doing other things and letting these debuffs wear off. I'm going to show you that's not what I do. I just want to get this all done because as soon as you complete this quest, all of the debuffs wear off. There's a mystery drink here at this table, so we're going to get that last. It's either going to help or temporarily hurt. But either way, we'll take it last because the debuff that applies, if it does hurt, doesn't affect you while you're riding your mount. Or if it does, not noticeably. All right. What am I at? Number 4? No, that was 3. Good. Eggs, and then there's berries over there. Oops. And then mystery drink. We'll leave those berries for the next people. Okay, that did not help. We got the 20-second minus 60% run speed, but it's okay because again, it doesn't really affect us moving between tables if we're mounted up. It only affects us while we're at these tables, and this table super small. I didn't actually scroll down so we can see this progress over here on the quick guide, which is kind of the whole point of this. Okay, that was the third station. If you have the time, go ahead and mount up before you talk to the announcer. I'm actually going to make it so I can see the timer. I know it's ticking down, but it's fine. Okay. Berries, berries, mushrooms, mushrooms. As Little Redhead pointed out, berries are only minus 1% debuff, mushrooms are only 3, eggs are only 5. So when you compare that to the 10 or 15 for a pie or bread, it's not so bad. All right, nothing else seems to... Oh, hey, there's Mr. Drink. Let's see. All right, that cleared off all the debuffs, which makes for a very funny transition to the last table. Because when you get to the last table, you get a visual debuff, unless you have post-processing turned off, as if, oh my goodness, you're almost overcome, except of course, we're not. So I'll be kind and just clear this last table of carbs. Alright, we can see we're working the last one, and those debuffs are catching up because they're so much more impressive than berries and whatnot. But it doesn't matter. Do remember to talk to the final announcer and complete that quest. And then that clears all the debuffs. Okay, that means we can go ahead and proceed with the rest of this. We're going to start with tidying up. Now, normally I do this first on the assumption that Onike's the biggest stomach of them all quest is not available. But if that is available, these are mutually exclusive. If you have the biggest stomach of them all, even if you haven't started, you can't get tidying up, and vice versa. Aw. The redhead asked if Effie has lived in the Netherlands, and apparently no, but they wish. Yeah, I've really enjoyed being able to live here. In the sort of suburban areas that I and Little Redhead have lived in for much of our lives, car ownership is kind of a mandatory thing. Like, it's just really difficult to live your life on a day-to-day basis without a car. Things like trips to the grocery store might be multi-hour affairs or unsafe because there's no ways to cycle or walk over there without interacting with cars, all sorts of things. And so it's really nice to live in a place where auto ownership feels a lot more optional, among many, many other benefits of being here. G says that they are Russian American, but they like the U.S. more because of nachos and Taco Bell. You know what? It's funny the kinds of foods that you end up missing when you live in a place where you just can't get them easily. I think Little Red and I each had different opinions on that, but for me, like everything bagels, the kind you might get from a chain like Einstein Brothers Bagels or something, is just very difficult to source in the Netherlands. And short of learning how to make them myself, which is on my mind, in my copious spare time, I just there's a chain here called Bagels and Beans where they have them and they're close enough, right? But it's not quite the same. So if I were a little bit more dependent on my everything bagels, that would be a much tougher choice. He says, how long have you lived there for? Would you ever consider coming back to the U.S.? Or is it better? I think it's better over here for us. Like, that's a very subjective thing, right? Okay, we can delay turning in biggest stomach with them all because we've already done, or tidying up because they already did biggest stomach, so we're heading out. Yeah, like, where someone's going to be most comfortable living is definitely a very personal thing. Like, I don't think there's any way to objectively say, oh, this is better for everyone all the time. I think a lot of people would find it better for them to live in a community like what we're living in. But, it's whether or not they would think it was better or whether we would just think it was better for them. Like that's a potential clash of interest there. So it's best to avoid that. But it's certainly better for us. I mean, we have lots of friends and family still in the U.S., and so visiting the U.S. is still something that happens from time to time. But the act of day-to-day living in a place is just very different than the act of visiting a place. And a lot more of the things that we don't like about living in America come across when we're living in America as opposed to just visiting for a week or two. The redhead says, thinking about it, I'd say I've also lived in quite urban areas in the U.S., but car was still mandatory. I've only have a partial overlap with Little Redhead in places we've lived. So I've lived in places like the suburbs of Dallas and the suburbs of Jackson, Mississippi, and those are very different places. But the cars felt pretty required to really fully participate. But I haven't lived in the downtown of either of them. Alright, that's all the firewood. I always forget to gather a stick, but you know what? I've got a list that tells me that I forgot to gather a stick, so it's okay. We're going to move on to cold as ice and stuffing the stuff for berries. I'm too busy looking at chat. Dave H says, being car dependent is hard to imagine for someone like me who went from a small town Germany to Berlin and back to a small town. Yeah, I've really enjoyed the ability to use mass transit or public transit in Germany when we visit there. Because I don't particularly want to drive a car in Germany any more than I want to drive one in the Netherlands. I did not one-shot that thing. Okay, that was for winter weather. He says, I would love to live in a country where I could walk easily everywhere. I miss walking around a lot. It's therapeutic. The sidewalks are almost non-existent here, so I can't really walk anywhere safely or conveniently. Yeah, it's sort of a side effect, I think, of if a country is currently at least dedicated to having an extensive bicycling network. Well, worst case, although there's usually also sidewalks so that the pedestrians and cyclists don't conflict, but worst case, if you have to walk somewhere and there's a bicycling path that gets you there, you can walk on the bicycling path. You know, you be careful with it, but it's still way safer than walking anywhere near a car. You know, I don't want to be run into by a car or a bicycle, but if I had to choose, I know which one I would choose. There's a cat making noise in the kitchen. Yeah, Little Redhead says that she really enjoys the public transit here. We don't own a car. It really suits us well. Can't imagine living in the U.S. again. Like, there are a couple of places in the U.S. that have such density and such mass transit usage that it would kind of mimic our life here. But, you know, those are places like New York City and a few other places that are so dense that they have all those amenities. And we live in a village of 15,000 people. So I think it's the challenge of, can you find a place that is kind of small like what we're used to, but is dense enough where they have that kind of infrastructure. And there's probably a couple places in the U.S., but it's not the typical location. And as more and more people realize that's the kind of environment they want to live in, it's probably going to get harder and harder to find something affordable in that kind of an area. Oh, Mara, sure, take the daily one. I'll be back though. Stop being a ring on my radar. Okay, so we're going to go into this corner and do the quest swapping. I do go ahead and both move them off into our secret headquarters and also Charitable Spirit, because they need money for their resistance activities. Fight the good fight, comrade. We're going to take that mayor down. Huh. Well, that one's missing. But you know what? We were going to duck up here anyway, so that's okay. Dame Patricia says, friend of hers in Philadelphia takes his car to work, but uses a parking place a mile away from work so he can have a little walk 2 times a day. That's nice. Yeah, certainly there's some places where you can like go to a park and ride kind of place and then commute the rest of the way into work, so you're not driving all the way there. But even just kind of forcing yourself to get a little exercise, that's really nice. It's great that they have that kind of flexibility. Effie says, that sounds so nice. I'm in a small town outside of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so there aren't too many places to walk, sadly. Yeah. I can imagine the lower density sounding of that area would make it challenging. For historical reasons, a lot of locations in the Netherlands were, of course, surrounded by farms, and farmers had a lot of sway to not, get swallowed up by an expanding municipality. And so you have a lot of places where you have a lot of farmland creeping up to the edge of what has to be kind of a very dense location because there's just not room to spread out, so you spread up instead. So our little town here has apartment complexes that are 4 stories high, and houses that are 3 stories high in long rows instead of like a bunch of single family homes. So it allows 15,000 people to live in about 3 square miles, and I feel like the tendency of a lot of American locations is to spread out instead of spread up. It's cheaper to do. You get your own place. You get a big backyard. All these things that a lot of people want or think they want. I mean, thinking you want something is kind of the same as wanting it. But things that they want in the moment. And that's a problem from a municipality side of things, because if you're paying by the inch, essentially, by the meter, for things like sidewalks or pipes for sewer or wires for electrical systems, then if you get one house in the space where 10 Dutch houses would be, your cost per house is 10 times for those utilities. And these are things that once they go in, you have a permanent obligation to maintain them. Well, not necessarily permanent, but if the municipality puts a road in, they essentially have signed up for the life of that road forever to maintain it. So they have a lifelong obligation to maintain this thing at 10 times that cost per unit of housing. So those places that can be very dense can just get a lot more for a lot less. And it's really interesting to see that from a perspective now of having lived here, because it wasn't something I was really paying attention to while I was living in the U.S. Charitable Spirit. We were going to continue with the last couple ones. And we got to go build a snow person. LOTRO question. What kind of a stream do you think this is, Do? I'm going to read yours right after I gather these sticks. Since you can document every deed and items and maps and crafting resource icons on the map, etc., can you make a plugin that shows us every quest in the land, no matter the level, so we know we completed a land 100%, like the deed tracker, but for questing? It is possible. It is something I've been noodling on how to do. One of the things I like about the deed tracker is that it's a hierarchical view of the deeds, because the in-game deed tracker resists that kind of a presentation. It shows you things ordered first by the type and then alphabetical with no regard to an ordering among them. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm going to use the LOTRO plugin compendium and install deed tracker. Great. If you're in the game, remember if you've changed your plugins, you need to hit this green arrow to refresh, and we'll go ahead and load that up. And then in here, let's take a look at Breland. This is the first tab in the regional area of the in-game deed log. And so if we take a look at Breland, the way I wanted to present them was hierarchically. So we can see Deeds of Breland, underneath that is Explorer of Breland, and the Barrow Downs, Old Forest of Ruins lore, the Cardolan Prince, History of the Dúnedain, Flowers of the Old Forest are all under that. And so we can see that in order to complete Explorer of Breland, there are 6 deeds that are a part of that. And we have this hierarchical view of things, including saying that, oh, hey, these 2 Slayer deeds, Gravedigger, Gravedigger Advanced, Brute Hunter Advanced, they're not a part of the Slayer of Breland. That's interesting. We could even noodle on why that is. Maybe they were introduced after the Slayer of Breland deed was introduced, and there definitely seems to be a corporate culture at SSG that if they're going to change deeds around, they try not to impact anyone who's already obtained those deeds. So if they add new Slayer deeds, well, they just don't go into the wrapper. And so anyone who's already gotten that wrapper doesn't retroactively lose it or have it but have not completed the prerequisites for it. The whole thing would be a mess. So we can see how these things are related or are not related. And so a thing that I'd be very interested in doing is capturing that idea of quest chains. But quest chains can be more complicated. What were we doing? The Edoras evacuation is... What is that? Moving a city. That's what it is. Just to give an example of something we're doing over on Treebeard on our main characters. This is the... a way to represent the quest chain, and I think the wiki does a pretty good job of this, right, is when you're doing the moving a city quest chain, these are the things that are available, right? 2 brothers, the last cast, a missing child, Wayfarer's Red, abandoning the land, Poe True Despair, with that silly poet. And so I would be very interested in a hierarchical view that says, oh, in order to complete this quest, you kind of have to complete these other quests, but also a regional look of, oh, if you're moving through, following the storyline and following any vectors as they point you in reasonable directions and the epic, how does this all kind of intermingle? And it feels like just throwing all the quests into a UI with no relationship to each other and no particular ordering, that would be a thing. But there are some tools that can help you out. So let's go ahead and look at two of them. One of them's in-game and one of them's not. So Compendium. If you go ahead and look at the LOTRO Compendium plugin, well, okay, that's installed. We're going to come look at that. Remember to hit the refresh button, and we have the Compendium. Let's go ahead and load that. Okay, so in the Compendium, there is a Quests tab, and you can go ahead and search for Moving Them Off. So we can see there is a quest called Moving Them Off, and, oh, sorry, that's this one that we're talking about. Moving a city, that's what I meant. Yeah, well, it's a good example. Okay, moving a city. Cool. Here's a quest. We can see whether it's been marked complete or not. I don't know if it automatically tracks completed ones. Probably not. That's a lot harder than just letting you check it off. But we can see all of this generated information about what to do at each step, and what details about the quest. All of this. So that's pretty cool. We can see points of interest. If we had more map installed, we could have integrations there. So that can get a long part of the way. There's also the LOTRO Companion desktop application. Sure. And he says, I don't think I have that. Can you link it, please? Absolutely. I just put a link into chat for the LOTRO Compendium plugin, which is different from the LOTRO plugin Compendium. The LOTRO plugin Compendium is a desktop application that can automatically install and update plugins for you. It's great. Made by the same person and named confusingly, the LOTRO Compendium plugin is an in-game way to access a bunch of this information. It's pretty cool. Also in chat there is a link to the LOTRO plugin Compendium over here on LOTRO interface. That is the one that says LOTRO plugin Compendium here, and that's the desktop application that you optionally can download to manage your, many of your plugins. Okay, the other thing is there is a desktop application called LOTRO Companion, which is different from LOTRO Compendium. What are you going to do? And LOTRO Companion is a desktop application, and you can use this to go ahead and sort of interrogate the state of your LOTRO client and get information about it. So, if you haven't opened your vault or storage recently, go ahead and do that if you want it to be a part of the scan. Open up the LOTRO Companion, and then go ahead and hit that scan button, and it goes ahead and checks in on a bunch of different things. Now, we're over here on Treebeard, that was Killbach, and what I can do is I can pop open the quests view, and I can say, hey, I don't want to care about the completed ones, show me just uncompleted ones. And we can see I have not completed 11,000 out of 12,000 quests, but it maybe is more useful to look at categories. So if we look at Breland, we can see that, that's interesting. Oh, Tale of Shipper Mariner, of course, that's a part of Breland. We can see a listing of quests within Breland that this character has not completed. Since this is not my completionist main character, there's a whole bunch of them. It might be easier to look at a different character. Let's look at my completionist, Affidel. Let's go to quests. Nope, I closed the wrong thing. Let's come into quests, and if we say show me only uncompleted ones, we can see there's only 6,500 quests that haven't been completed. But if we go look at Breland, we can see. Oh, that's interesting. There are a number of quests in Breland that are ones that my character's not going to do. We can see these exchange my ashen horse. Those either aren't available anymore or are just ones that my character's not doing. So it's possible to exclude these from consideration if I wanted to. I could go ahead and blacklist them. We can see, oh, I haven't done meeting the mayor. I haven't done a tour of Bree. Really? But one of the problems with a tool like this is that there are more quests and deeds in the game data files that are actively available right now to a character that just starts today. Sometimes you'll see older versions of quests or deeds that were kind of versioned out in favor of newer ones. So a tour of Bree used to be a way you learned about Breetown. I think it's actually a really neat quest, but it's been replaced by No Time for Tours. So, which gives you a different way to just jump right in. And instead of like wandering all around Breetown, they're like, hey, go out to Adzo's camp and do something. Which maybe they thought was a little bit nicer of an onboarding for people who were new to the area. But there's a really neat thing in when you look at this tour of Bree, like you learn about the auction house, you learn about the various facilities of Breetown. So that's kind of cool. But there's 15 different points you have to go around town, and I'm guessing enough people are like, oh, this is my 20th character, I do not want to go to 15 different places in Breetown. And they were like, okay, no time for tours. There you go. Go to 3 places and get questing. Tilian says, you could opt to not show hidden quests. Good point. In this UI, if something is marked hidden, we have a chance to filter it out. And that gets rid of a bunch of these. Looks like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quests that might be available to me. And there's still more possibilities for, oh, it's not available to my character for whatever reason. Sometimes a deed or quest isn't correctly marked as hidden necessarily, but a lot of times they are. But great point from Tellurian. So when you're using this tool, pay attention to this hidden box. A lot of times I'm doing it on instinct almost, so I forget that I need to do that. And then all of these exchange ones, I can't remember. What's the receipt of purchase? No, that's a reward. Interesting. Can you get a bay steed? Okay. Well, I'll have to look into that and see if those are even doable. But we can see Affidel has done most things. Apparently, Affidel's been bad about this Tales of the Shipwrecked Mariner. That's okay. Okay. So that's a thing you can do, is you can use a desktop program, LOTRO Companion, to get a sense of which quests you have completed and therefore which quests you still need to complete. But there could be some quests in there that are not generally available, and it might be a little bit of research to figure out what's going on. So, just like with DTracker, I would hope that an in-game plugin that I made would be broadly usable, so that quests, so that you could use it almost as a guide of going through an area, and not just, oh yeah, you've done it or not done it. Yes, I don't know if there's a way to automatically populate your completion with the in-game compendium, but certainly, yeah. If I made a quest tracker like Deed Tracker, there would be an import from LOTRO Companion option. Tellurian points out that the LOTRO Companion program we were just looking at, this is able to automatically detect your completion status, but the in-game LOTRO Compendium plugin may not be able to do that. If he says, can you send me a link to the D tracker? Tell you what, I can do that too. Okay, neat. So we were almost done following this when we got a little distracted. Turn and filling the field. Can do. I'm sure there are some other sources available for some plugins, but in general, if you are a Lord of the Rings Online plugin, you're probably going to have a home at litrainterface.com. So that's a great place to start when you're looking for new plugin ideas. Okay. So we just refreshed our memory. What's going on with this plugin? Now, community member, I think Mandervell, am I saying that right? Sent in some German fixes for this. So we're going to start by reviewing those, and then we'll see what else we need to do. And for that, okay, so we've got two things. We've got these file comparisons ready to go, and we're going to pull up the code in Visual Studio Code here. Now, my apologies, there's going to be a lot of stuff to look at and not a lot of space on the screen, but maybe we'll try vertically spacing them like this. Okay, so strings. What have they done? Let's take a look at that. Okay, so we are going to version 2.0.5 changes. We're going to have a note for that. We've got our to-do file to remind us things, look at Mandervall's additional changes. Excellent, we're going to do that right now. And we're going to start with strings. Oh! Tillian reminds me that that they are the person who was sending me stuff. I think I knew that at some point. It's been a weird couple of weeks or months here, but thanks for reminding me that. Well, how would you like to be recognized in the, let's see. Well, I'm not sure I credited you properly. But yes, we should definitely include your name on here somewhere. Je suis. Okay, let's come on into strings. Tellurian, excellent, thank you. We've got some German localization here under Yule. Okay, and what do we have? Oh, hey. I missed those somehow. Oh, we're in debuffs. Fascinating. Okay, so I was just making a new tool to help with this kind of thing as going forward. Let me go ahead and pull that up so we can see it running side by side as well. It only will work for strings that are specifically part of LOTRO. It's not a general translator. Let's see. Label lookup. Yeah. Okay. So what we want is we want to demonstrate this. So this is that thing. And we're going to go ahead and pass it a string. Villain. Fantastic. Hang on a sec. Why is that doing that? What do you mean index with outside the bounds of the array? Okay, hang on. This was working an hour ago. All right, you know what? It's fine. We'll run it in the debugger. Doesn't matter. Okay, so villain. Oops. Have to spell it right. And we can see that the following translations exist in the data files for villain. And conveniently, they're all pretty consistent. And even better, they match what was sent. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy it out of here, since we know that came straight from there. But yeah, Tilliard, I trust your changes, but it's nice to have a backup way to do this. So, protagonist. Helpterstellar. Okay. Extra. Statist. Excellent. These things are a little backwards the way I'm used to looking at them. I'll swap them around. And the Frost Bluff Theater. Okay, and Frostfell's Theater. Perfect. Do asks, did you make plugins back in the old days of LOTRO, like 2007 to 2014? Was it more difficult back then? First, no. I played the game a little bit back during early release, maybe the first year, but not during beta. And then I didn't come back to it until 2019 or so. And it did not take me too long to get sucked into the idea of first modifying existing plugins and then making my own. From what I have read, there was more volatility in the LOTRO Lua API. What it was that you could do, how you interact with the game, because they were still kind of bringing it to market, as it were, the Lua part of things. And so, if you were jumping on board right away to write a plugin, well, this plugin manager thing, from what I have heard, it did not exist. Like, there were people making the equivalent of this plugin manager until there was one in game. And so there were chat commands, like you could do /plugin space load space whatever, but there was no UI like this. And maybe this UI isn't the best thing ever, but try working without it, and suddenly it's like, oh, that's pretty that's pretty useful. Let's keep that. And so the lack of changes in the LOTRO API is kind of a double-edged sword, in the sense that on the one hand, it would be nice if we got. It would be nice for us plugin developers if there were more changes that came our way, especially new features that let us do things like look inside carryalls and not just know when something has gone into a carryall or come out of a carryall, but which carryall. That would be pretty neat. But at the same time, it means that plugins that were written 10 years ago have a very strong chance of still working today, because there hasn't been fundamental changes in how things worked, or even subtle changes in how things worked. The biggest change that caught a bunch of plugins out in the recent past was, it seems like there was an updated version of the baked-in Lua inside of LOTRO when I think we're doing the 32-bit to 64-bit shift. And so how other languages besides English, how French and German localization was handled, was tweaked just slightly. Not because LOTRO did something different, but because the Lua interpreter inside of it did. And so, I go, this says, or imagine if there was an API call for, where is my character right now? Seems like such a basic thing. Yeah, so there are things we would like to see, but at the same time, the fact that there is so much stability or a lack of change in the LOTRO API means that now a plugin can last for a very long time with no changes and still work just the way it did when it first came out. But my understanding is if you wrote a plugin in the early days of Lua support, there's a good chance that something fundamentally would change or stop working or start working. And so it sounds like it was a little bit more of a chaotic time. So there are benefits and drawbacks to both of those situations. Yeah, plugins can use a couple of tricks to get a general sense of where you are. The thing that DTracker uses a bunch is paying attention to the regional chat channel changes. And Titan Bar does this too. I lifted the technique straight up from Titan Bar, improved it for DTracker a little bit, because Titan Bar only was doing that textually to show you up on the bar, but it wasn't making sense of it. It wasn't trying to interpret that in any meaningful way. But Titan Bar was paying attention to regional chat, and I was like, aha, you can use a regional chat to figure out what region you're in. Cool. So that's cool that you can know that you're in Breland, kind of. Or at least the last time you entered a regional chat channel, you were going into Breland. So it's a rough approximation. But the fact that we have to look for /LOC outputs, and only then can we know where we were at that time, it's a little sad. But I could understand, someone's hypothesis was the /LOC hits the servers instead of just the client. And if that's the case, I could see how they would not want to give people a way to DDoS the SSG servers from a plugin. I'd love to just be able to query the client location. Where do I think I am on the client without hitting the server? And I would be happy with that as a plugin author. Like, yeah, don't even touch the server. Just from the client's perspective, where do you think the character is right now? That'd be fine. Even if the implementation was something like, cool, we're going to give you an answer, and the answer, if you call us again in the next, 5 seconds, we're just going to give you that same answer. We're going to do no calculations on it. And, just to kind of enforce that, you need to throttle yourself. They could do the whole, we're going to give you absolutely no answer. We're going to hang up. If you call this more than once a second, we're going to just, stall out your plugin. There could be ways they could moderate this kind of thing. Get me the coordinates next to minimap function. That would be cool, except of course the coordinate systems across Middle-earth, much like the languages and peoples across Middle-earth, are variable. And so knowing that I'm at 12 north, 95.3 west does specifically put me in Winterhome because that's the only place that has those coordinates. But there are other places where coordinate systems are not unique. And so just getting me those coordinates, that wouldn't be nothing. I would find that very helpful. But it certainly wouldn't be a unique answer to where am I. Dave My Patient says, as soon as you write such a plugin, something will change. Murphy is against us. Yeah. Do asks a question about the game. Is it really hard to change and update a UI? SSG makes it sound like it's too much time and resources to do much of anything. But I watched this famous coder, Fallout coder and WoW coder said it doesn't take long at all. Let's see. So do you think as a programmer it would be difficult, or do they just need a day of grinding? Is it really too hard, or can they just not do it? So talking about people who say, oh yeah, writing the code's really fast. So there's a couple aspects to this question. First of all, people who are writing code aren't necessarily doing the work that a UI refresh needs. But as someone who has done coding for big companies and small companies and multiples in between, a lot of the day of someone who's doing a full-on software engineering job isn't necessarily writing lines of code. It really depends on the nature of the organization where you work. But when I was working for one large company, the code that I wrote was just one part of my job. There was the documentation. How is the code supposed to work? There's the testing. How can someone show that the code that I wrote does what I say it does? There was the other side of the testing, is how can we know that what I wrote addresses the problem that needed to be solved? So test procedures don't write themselves. Design documents don't write themselves. Code reviews don't happen by themselves. And none of those are specifically writing code. So what might take you, a day to research and 2 days to write up all these other things might, in the moment, like the actual text editing of code, might only take a few minutes to bang out and then give it a once over and be like, yeah, that works. But all of these things around it are important parts of a mature process. And in the case of Lord of the Rings Online, also any text that you happen to touch might need to be translated into multiple languages. So for a software engineer, the code writing part of the day might be a very small portion of the things that they should be responsible for. Whether or not they are responsible for them at their company is a different question. And maybe should is the wrong word. At some companies, they will be responsible for these other things. At other companies, they might not be responsible, but that's either because someone else has to do them or because no one's doing them. And if no one's doing them, if no one's writing test procedures, if no one's writing design documents, if no one's writing all of these other things that are not code, that is probably a sign of a less mature development organization. Not guaranteed, but probably. So if someone says, oh yeah, it'd be really fast to write the code to do X, they might not be wrong, but first of all, is X the only thing that needs to happen in order for this, or is that just the coding part of it? And B, are they ignoring all of this other stuff by accident or intentionally? What is their motivation in not talking about all of this other stuff? I don't know. But another thing is, when we talk about Lord of the Rings Online, when we talk about a UI refresh, there's some things that are much more code adjacent. Things like, can the game actually scale up to a 2K or a 4K monitor and not run poorly performance-wise? But a big part of it is everything that's here. What we're looking at now is all of that stuff. But if you ignore all of that and put everything else on top of it, all these windows, all of this text, all of these graphics, these buttons that you can press, I wouldn't think of that as something a coder would be touching. Those are graphic design type people. And other thing that SSG has told us in the past is that the graphic for this button right here, the person waving button, just as an example, I'm going to grab that and blow it up. But not in that. Cool. Really? Okay. So this thing. This thing does not have a lot of pixels. We can see in here on screen, it looks like there's like 46 pixels. That's because my UI has been inflated from the default size to make it easier for me to see. So it's probably 32 pixels by 32 pixels. And the problem is, right now, in order to support higher resolutions kind of natively, if you used just those pixels and blow it up, you don't get what I think most people are looking for when they're looking at a 4K experience or a 2K experience, right? Like, it doesn't look terrible, but it's not what people mean when they're talking about a 4K resolution, experience in the UI. So every asset for which there does not exist a higher resolution version will need to be recreated, right? And it's a big question mark at any company if the original thing you used to produce this was in a higher resolution to begin with, or this was 16 years ago, 20 years ago for some of these assets. So were you lucky to have 32 by 32 and you just crammed it in there and your original source files are gone? Little Reddit says, if players saw that image on their screen, they'd complain. Sure, and they might be right to if that is not their expectation. So every image, and if we come into the plugin compendium, do I have two of those? I do. And coming into the resource viewer, I think this is what I want. Neat. That's not quite what I wanted, but okay. So it looks like there's about 20,000 things. How do I tile this? Oh, Garen, you are mystifying me. Okay, I'm going to assume that's not the one I was thinking of. The one I was thinking was by Thurlor. So let's actually go on over to LOTRO interface and find one that Thurlor is responsible for. Go to the list of Thurlor's interfaces and Asset Browser. That's the one I wanted. Okay, Asset Browser. That's at least the one I'm familiar with. Okay, so reload that. Asset Browser, great. Okay, so just to give us a sense, really, of how many images there are in here that would need to be addressed. Apparently, I'm weirding it out by my choices. Reset. Sure. So there's a bunch of images in this game. And you know what? If I just search for 32 by 32, that might help. Great. So every one of these things would need to be upscaled. And probably that means a graphic designer needs to go and sit down and recreate them. And while they're doing that, if they're not careful, they might also start thinking, is this a good image for this, or is this a 20-year-old image for this?
Why does it keep doing that?
It is flashing because I've been trying to adjust it so we can see more of the images. So, I wonder if I can do scaled. No, that doesn't do. So, I'm being told that's visually painful. Here, let me go to a different part of it. Yeah. So think about that. There's tens of thousands of images in the game, and even if you had the original source for all of them, and even if that source was upscaled to the point where you could just use it as is, imagine going to 20,000 images and evaluating each one. Is this one okay? Does it need to change? Does it need to be scaled up? Who's going to recreate this? And repeat. I mean, imagine just doing a really quick action like, pick up a thing from your desk and putting it down 20,000 times. But now expand it to where each one of these conversation choices might involve multiple people, multiple minutes, and that's just the 32 by 32 images that exist in the game, let alone everything else. And so when we're talking about graphical updates, and SSG has said they're trying to do these things, they're trying to work through them. But if you just paid someone to sit and look at each one of these images and do something 5 minutes each image, that's what, 100,000 minutes? Which is that many hours, which is, well, that's most of a year's worth of work for a person, assuming they could knock out each one in 5 minutes or less. And spoilers, they can't. And that's assuming they can just open up a file, re-render it out at the higher images that they need. But really, you still need to support lower resolution. So each one of these images, there was an assumption that they were just 32 by 32. But now you really want to do what like modern icon packs do for operating system, which is to have the 32 by 32 and the 64 by 64 and the 128 by 128 and the 256 by 256. And now you need logic to decide which one of those to show because it's closest to what the resolution is you're showing to the user. And it starts to become an intimidating prospect. So he says, can't they just hire someone to redo them all, or an intern, or the new AI systems that can just change and create tons of stuff? So AI is an interesting question because on the one hand, it is a copyright violation machine that steals content from other places and hallucinates new things from it. And you would have a hard time currently in American jurisdictions trying to copyright anything that came out of an AI generative process, because as it currently stands, AI-generated anything isn't copyrightable. And companies that make products like Lord of the Rings Online tend to want to have a level of copyright control over what they make. Also, AI generative systems are giant hallucination machines, and sometimes they're very good at hallucinating, but you still need a human to check everything they do, and when it comes to images, probably every pixel that they've produced, because you'll find things like watermarks from the artists that they're stealing, trained on. You'll find things like humans with 6 fingers or 3 legs or whatnot. And as humans, it's actually really easy for us to not see some of these subtle mistakes. When I say subtle, it's easy for us to gloss over some mistakes that AI have made in images, for example, until we go back and we're like, oh, wait, this is anatomically completely incorrect. But from a glance, it was like, oh, good enough, because, yeah, it was good enough. It mashed things together, and it said, oh, good enough. And so you haven't really, if you're responsible, you haven't really changed the, you've changed the type of work. Now, instead of generating these upscaled versions of images or creating new ones, now you're paying someone to check the result of a machine to see if it did a good enough job that you can be like, oh, okay, that's fine. But good enough isn't necessarily the goal of a company making something like Lord of the Rings Online. Maybe it is. But if a company has a choice to either pay someone to look at generated output and verify that it's correct, or just pay someone to make it good and then it's copyrightable, and you have quality control processes, and you're going to have a consistent artwork style between all 20,000 pieces of them, like, there are benefits to not doing the AI route, even beyond the legal copyrightable mess. Anyway, as someone whose job it is does not include making those kinds of decisions, those are just some thoughts I have in my head. And again, I don't work for SSG. I don't have any particular insight into their corporate thought process. But those are things that would definitely be passing through my mind if I had a job like this. Now, we can hope that over the last, let's say, 5 or 10 years, as higher resolution monitors have become more available. Now, we talk about 2K, 4K monitors. 1K is your 1920 by 1080 resolution. It's sort of a widescreen format, and it's kind of a standard in a lot of desktop and mobile applications. I'm running on 2 1K monitors right now. And so a 2K would be twice that in each direction, and a 4K would be 4 times that in each direction. These have been becoming more and more popular. And one would hope that the artists and tech team at SSG will have been thinking about that for quite some time and saying, hey, let's not make more work on future cells when we're making these new images that we're putting into the game. So when the Mariner came out, they came with a bunch of skills with a bunch of new images. One could hope that they would have done this kind of work and said, okay, we know we're going to need 256 by 256 versions of these 32 by 30 bit icons. So let's start there. Make sure we have that. Make sure we have that at each step down, the 128s by 128s and the 64 by 64 and the 32 by 32, so that when we're ready to do higher scale UI stuff, that's one less icon that we have to deal with. I don't know if they've been doing this, but that's certainly a direction I would have encouraged them to do had I been able to wave a magic wand 5 years ago, right? So they could have done that. So when we look at every image in the game, that's probably not a reasonable expectation. Things that they've done in the last 5 or 10 years, those are probably closer to being a turnkey solution, like things that are already done. They can ship it out the door whenever they're ready to do everything else. It's those old ones that are 16, 20 years old where they will have more work. The new ones that are 1 or 2 or 5 years old, I hope, are pretty much ready for this. Kevin says, I suspect some form of upscaling would be more economical for them with older assets. Now, I would hope that anything done recently, the source material would have been a much higher resolution and would already have been compressed down into its final format, so they can just go back and just redo the export with different settings. So Kevin says, you would hope if they have the storage. Well, storage has gotten much cheaper over the last 20 years. So even if we don't see it on our end anytime soon, I would hope that on their end, yeah, they have a solution for this. So yeah, it's a challenging idea to go to something like this and take every piece of art in the game and make sure it looks good in a higher resolution format, 2K, 4K, and to future-proof yourself, because you don't really want to be done with this, and then in 5 years everyone's got the super new 16K in-eye goggle experience, and then you're like, oh, gotta do that again. So I don't know if there's any way to future-proof yourself at all, but certainly they'll have 16 years of learning of how do we do asset storage management so that we don't lose any source files. Not to say that they ever have lost any, but that's just a thing that can happen in a company that's been around for that long. Anyway. So, all that being said, those are some musings I've got on the problem, which is there's a lot of art, there's a lot of UI, and the people who are doing the UI changes aren't necessarily the people who would do code changes, though there would certainly be code changes to support this. And so this is not a one person can just bang it out on the weekend kind of a deal without it looking not quite so good. Okay, your own stuff was having a problem. That's fine. So those are some thoughts that are in my head. I'm glad it's not me who has to do this job. But they do talk about it being a goal of theirs and that they're making progress on it. But those might be some of the things that could slow them down. Is just there's a lot to look at. There's also some things that I think Scenario has mentioned in the past is that there's a reuse of assets between locations, and it sounds like that may be sometimes there are side effects where they'll change an asset and because they want to change it in one location and it changes it in every other location in a way that was unintended. Or in just one other location that was unintended. So I don't assume that would bite them so much if they're trying to scale up everything to higher resolutions, but it's certainly a thing that could be in their minds as well, because that has caused them problems in other places. Well, neat. Thanks, Stu. Thanks for throwing out questions that I don't have firm answers on, but I definitely have thoughts about. Okay. Asks, question, is it hard to import an old game into new engine? Like there's so many remaster games now. That is actually beyond my expertise. I have done no work with games and game engines. And so I would guess that between the game and the engine, there is an interface layer. Everything that needs to talk to the engine goes and talks to this interface layer. This is the thing that's very common to do. For instance, when you have a database, you'll have a database layer, and everything in your program that needs to talk to the database goes through this database layer. Because if you need to change out your database, if you've done it right, the only thing you need to do is this layer between the two. Instead of all the places in your code that talk to the database, you just have this little layer in between. So I would hope, if such things can be done in the same way when you're talking about the engine, that you're not talking about rewriting all the things, you're talking about the layer that lets the client talk to the engine and back and forth. But beyond those very vague ideas, that is well beyond me. Kevin says, that is a $300 million question to port everything to a new engine. Possibly. Certainly, if you're looking at companies like Blizzard or ID Software or other big players in gaming, they're going to have resources to throw at the problem that a company like SSG just isn't going to probably feel comfortable committing. And so, while Blizzard might be able to take 60 engineers and commit them to a project to make WoW Classic, that's just not something that you'll see SSG doing anytime soon. Little Redhead thinks Scenario has said something about them using a proprietary engine. I don't recall the details of what he said. I think the little that I recall is that whatever engine that they started using, they've modified it sufficiently since then to suit their purposes that it's no longer an off the shelf product anymore. But that's that's all I've got for that. Okay. Well, while other questions might filter on through, I want to keep on taking in some of Tellurian's changes. So, dance. Tanzen. Well, that's interesting. Well, Tellurian, you said Tanza, and the translation in game is Tanzen. Oh, okay, because that's for our UI. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Okay. Great job with localizing strings for the plugin. Hubbed Fenster. Well, that's a straightforward way of putting it. Yeah, okay. Nice. Cool. Awesome job with those, Tellurian. Let's move on to quest strings. Okay. Quest strings, line 591. Nice. This pops up in the UI. And I will assume that you have said correct things here. New creature. 604. Nice. 626. Well, Tellurian, would you like to be thanked as Tellurian in the README file or something? Oh yes, I said Manderville here, but I could say Tellurian. Okay. Now I've been copying things out of the comparison utility just to kind of make sure I understand what's going on. Once you're comfortable with this kind of thing, you can just use your standard comparison utility. I use Beyond Compare and just copy the things over straight up. And so that's the thing you can do as well. I wanted to sort of do it manually a couple times, make sure I understood what changes were coming in and if I was happy with them. But I've been happy with them and I understand them, so we're good. Okay. The final thing is, and this is something I should have done before I released the plugin, and I wasn't even thinking about it, was the German and French contents for these files. Now, what would have happened if a German or French person got this update and just run it? I suspect it would have been an error message, and that was my bad. So let's take a look at that. Language. Get client lang. Okay, are we using that? All right, there are a couple places that still use client lang, and that's fine. Dave Hatbation says, I tend to play in English, not German. It makes it easier to work with the wiki. I've definitely heard that before from people, and I've also heard that sometimes they just like the in-game English text more than they like the localized versions. Patine says, hello, hi, welcome. So what we want to do is we want to come in and say client lang. Instead of accepting whatever get client language is, we're going to go ahead and say language equals German. We'll get started with that. And so the question is, if I try to load this, I really expected it to not work. Let's do a little digging into that. So, turbine.shell.writeLine processing Yule en. And what I really just want to do is take that into each one of these. Yule dd and Yule fr. And let's take another look and see what we get. Okay, so we see loaded festival. Yeah, say /festival. So we're seeing German text there, but we're also seeing processing Yule en, which has me worried. So let's take a look and see where these files are brought in. Oh, that's funny. This wouldn't have worked. Okay, so we need, instead of looking here, we need to look at our central file. Otherwise, this doesn't work. Okay. So these are going to be capital letters. So we need client lang. So if client lang equals French, then do that. Else, we need it to be different. Okay. German. And we can get rid of that. Okay. So that's what we need it to be in order for this testing to work. Nope. D says they're off to bed very late here. Well, good luck with your dentist appointment. Okay. So we can see processing Yule en still. Let's check this again. Okay, why are we processing Yule en? Is a cat making strange noises? Sure seems like it. Okay, so turbine.shell.writeLine client lang. Let's see what this is. There we go. Client lang is a nil value. Is it? Oh, goodness. Yeah, okay, globals didn't exist there. That sure seems like a problem. Globals sure seems like it should come first. We're going to go ahead and simplify this. Okay, globals uses get client language. Cool. That's not declared in globals. That's declared in general function, so we can't just blindly move it up. Okay, it might be better to go ahead and say these quick guides have to happen later. Okay. Yeah. Someone just leveled. Nice. Okay, so there we go. Here's what happens if we do this correctly. So we get a quick guide with a bunch of entries, but the textual versions of those are empty. Oh, also, we have no reset this quick guide. That's fun. Okay. Now, the funny thing is, some parts of it could still work, but the auto detection also isn't right. So let's go ahead and see what we need. In here, we have a couple of different structures. We have credits, so that's where we're going to thank Telerian. Telerian says they were distracted with Storvergun. I was just curious if you wanted to be credited as Telerian or Manderval. Because in here, it's Manderval. Dean says, how's it going today? It's going great. Like scenario, must remember to drink. Okay, so what do we have? We have the display values for things, and that's most of this. But we also have the text that we get when we get a new quest, or when we've completed a quest, or when a quest progresses. And some of these are easily obtainable from the data files. So for instance, you averted the empty keg crisis. We know exactly what that should be. You have the crisis to live. Cool, yes. Okay, Manderville's fine, says Telerian. Great. Okay, so the version that Telerian sent in, yeah, we need to translate it by Manderville in here, because you did a lot of work here. Okay, so the credits, whatever credits and whatever translation credits are coming in. Now you've done a really good job of doing escapes for non-basic ASCII characters. What are you doing, little one? In a sec. Okay. You've done a really good job of doing these escapes, Telerian, but I'm curious why you're not just embedding the characters as they are. Umlauts and accents and all, because I've had pretty good success with that. Are you not having success with that? And so in your machines, you really need them to be separated out like this? I only say that because it definitely makes it harder for me to do searches and updates, because any find just fails on those because they don't match. At least in a native find. You tested it with the umlauts, but they were not recognized. Okay. Also, there are some tab characters in here. We're going to go ahead and replace them with 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if we want to maintain this very nice spacing that you've got here, we'll just update that. Just like that. Okay. Well, since it's working for you, I'm not going to play around with that much. But okay. All right. Does that look reasonably correct? Drow asks, is there a way to change the ring color above low-level quest givers? My eyes are old. First of all, I would ask if you have enabled the option for trivial quests in your UI settings. Show trivial quest icons in radar, because that is a way to see them in the radar, although it does not affect the color above them, which is still that gray color. It does make it easier to find that they have, there's someone in the area with a quest for me, and you can even click the rings in the radar to highlight the person. So that right there, oh, that's the festival announcer. Okay, I can go find the festival announcer. Cool, they have a quest for me. So I would encourage you to enable trivial icons if you're looking to interact with them, and then you can click on them. Okay, so you do have that enabled. Yeah, the other thing is I would encourage you to click on them in order to select the one who has the quest. And then if you don't already have it, this little dotted line that shows you the direction to your target is also, I find, a very, very helpful to narrow in on who is it that I'm talking to. You can also use your use button, which by default is you, but I've remapped it, to pilot yourself over to someone and start talking to them. So if you've selected them in the radar, so for instance, let's move to someone else. Oh, I see a ring, select them in the radar. I can see the arrow over there. I can see the little dotted line down here. And if I press use, I run on over there and it pops open. So unfortunately, I don't have a way to change this ring, although I've heard some people talking about reshader as a way to change how the game looks as a whole. I have no idea what it does or if it would do such a thing. But those are some in-game techniques that I would recommend using. If you don't already have it enabled, the dotted line that shows you how to get to a target is a little wonky when you're on topography because sometimes it sinks below the ground, but it's usually pretty good. And let's see, target. Direction. Directional selection indicator. So WinCheck displays a directional indicator to your current selection. And we can see if I unselect it, that goes away. If I select it, that comes back. So that's what that one is. The directional selection indicator, I would definitely recommend turning it on. It's works very nicely, especially in a 3D environment. We'll be running around in some cave somewhere, and we'll select a target. Maybe I'm running with a hunter, and they found something. So I'll select it, and I get a line that's like shooting straight up. And it's like, okay, it's not on this level. Or, shooting straight down. Yeah. You didn't know that? Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, Drow, there's definitely ways to work around some problems. For instance, a friend of mine was having some problems with reading the quest objective text over here. And that was something a plugin could help with. So I went ahead and created, let me pull this up here, the opaque quest tracker. Just like the chat channels can become somewhat opaque, which can make it easier to read them, the opaque quest tracker is just a box that you can put underneath your quest area. You can lock it in place, and you can change how opaque it is. How easy is it to read that text versus see stuff behind it. You can also change the color if that's not your jam. Make it green or something. I don't know. I'm not the boss of you. But I think it just started with like a blackish color and then 50% opacity or something like that. And then it just sits underneath there, so you don't interact with it. There's a little a lockbox there, optionally, or you can say don't put it there. But there's a little lockbox, and when it's unlocked, you can move it around. You can click a corner to resize it, that kind of thing. Then you lock it back in place. So if your eyes also don't cooperate when it's time to read quest text on a noisy background, and a lot of these backgrounds can be very noisy, then you might find something like that helpful as well. Yeah. The redhead has figured out what the weird noise was. Casper the cat is sleeping in a box we just got. And it was Casper snoring. Or just like pawing at it.
Yeah, finding them out.
Our guy says they'll check that out too. Awesome. Let's see. Opaque quest tracker. Can I get a link to that? Hang on. There we go. Just put a link to that into chat. Okay. Okay, so Tellurian, is that a rough approximation and Übersetze von Manderval for and translated by? Did I hard code the language strings on the quick reset button? What are the chances that I would do such a thing? Yes, apparently I did do that. Whoops. Fantastic. There's just so much to do, man. Okay. So let's go fix that. Okay, so Tellurian, if you have a translation for that, yeah, okay, perfect. Quick guide reset equals all right, what is this thing? Reset this quick guide. Okay, and in German, let's zurücksetzen. Okay. And in French, oh, we don't have that. Great. So we're going to go ahead and get that. And that's in options. Oh, that's the wrong place for that. Is what that is. That's tokens. That's quests, debuffs, dances, windows. There we go. And this area of it isn't doing the everything on one line with lots of spaces in between, so I'm going to fix that. The redhead says, new name of the stream, plug it along, so much to do, man. Oh, you didn't find the title yet either. Well, that's funny. probably because it's hard-coded. Look at that quick guide. Okay, well, while we're doing this, quick guide title. All right, didn't find the title, would set it to Curzon Lighting. Okay. What a great idea. Let's do that. And for this, let's go ahead and steal that get string call coming into quick guide. And what we want is quick guide title. Great. I'm going to use the dot notation instead of the quote notation. A little shorter. And we're going to do the same basic idea, but for the reset, this quick guide, okay, fantastic. So if we go ahead and reload the Festival Buddy, hey, we have a translated title, translated reset button. Tyrant says, unfortunately, we have something in common. We do not speak French. Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. So if we didn't have a Tellurian here in chat, what would we do about this? Well, there's some things that we can do pretty straightforwardly. So let's go ahead and pull up the French version that both Tellurian and I do not speak. You share a border with the country. Come on, man. I so kid. For I also do not speak Spanish. Okay. We're going to come on in, and we're going to look at what the French version of this file would have to be. So the first thing we do is we pull in everything from the now finished English file. So we copy that, close it, come on into French, and that's the starting point. And of course, this is all wrong, but it is readable. And so if we come on into our globals function and we say, no, actually, we're not, I said globals, I meant general functions. We're not actually German, we are French. Then if we unload and we reload, we can see all the stuff from the French file got loaded. It's just not correct. So we're gonna make some changes to make this minimally work. Dame Hypatia says something in French. I'm sure it was good.
Nous sommes français.
So the first thing we would do is the display text doesn't matter as far as functionality of the plugin. It's lovely if it is the language that the person is reading, but what we can do is any place where we have the name of a quest, we could substitute in that quest. So instead of empty keg emergency, we'd come in and say, okay, what is that in French? Looks like it is this thing. And we could say, cool, anytime we see empty keg emergency, we can go ahead and substitute in the name of the French quest instead. Cool. Now, this new quest text, that's wrong, but we can fix that from the Midsummer one, where new quest looked like this. So instead of new quest, we're going to come on in, and we're going to place it with this. And the key thing is there's a non-printable difference between the space that is used for a lot of French quest, French stuff, and the space that we get for German and English. And so this is going to be highlighted in any decent text editor that, hey, this is different in some way, just so you know, and this is how Visual Studio Code calls it out. It's not a bad thing, it's not a wrong thing. In fact, you have to have this to match. If you had just a regular space instead, that would not match, which is why you should never be typing these strings from the UI. You need to be copy-pasting them from the game or from some other resource. Because if you're just blindly typing a space there because it looks like a space, and then you say, is this equal to that? The answer is no. Those are very, very different. That character is not the same. So watch out for that. So this is how new quest looks like here. Awesome. Let's go ahead and get the quest completed text. Okay. The rest of these are going to be possibly okay. So let's go ahead, and for advancing parts of these, we can look up if the complete text. You know what? I should really put these in quotes. So let's go ahead and come back into the code that does the code. So here we want to go ahead and just embed double quotes around that value. Great. And we'll try that again. Okay. Having the quotes there is really important because, again, if you have white space at the end or even beginning of this and you're not careful, you're going to miss it. So you really need to know for sure that the text from the string is done. And by embedding those quotes, which we need anyway, that's a way to do it. So all right, Ted Ives gives you a disappointed look. Apparently Ted Ives becomes Ted Femeron. All right. Virginia Judson. I didn't copy the quotes. Okay. Now, any of these where there's numbers, 10 out of 10, that's going to be a little bit harder because in the original string, it has placeholders for at least one of those numbers, probably both of them, x and y, as it were. And so we're going to have to do a slightly different method of finding this. That's okay. Multiple tools in the toolbox and all that. So, Jack Judson hurries away looking most appalled. Done. And finally, Bill Hyde's face is reddened, etc. Okay, there's the French. Should probably strip those quotes off because I keep doing that. All right. I said we should probably do that. Let's go ahead and do that. That's pretty simple. We're writing this in C#. So right now we're writing C# in order to help us write Lua, in order to help us write a plugin. So this is pretty straightforward. We say enter label. We say label equals that read line. Cool. So let's go ahead and manipulate it. If label 0 equals a double quote, then actually, trim might be better. Can you specify the character? Trim. You can specify the character. Fantastic. Please trim that. But apparently you need it to be a character, not a string. Fantastic. Okay. So, super easy. Just transform it by trimming. And trimming is a very common operation for strings. So that's why I was pretty sure we were going to be able to find it. Okay. So, it first trimmed those quotes off, then it found the thing, and then it put the quotes back on. Fantastic. Gathered a stick. And that's just going to make life a little bit easier. Now, when writing this, I knew that I was going to be doing a specific language. You could even have it automatically copy things to the clipboard, and that would be very interesting. All right, you've got me curious. C#, put string on clipboard. Tell me more. Sure, Stack Overflow is usually pretty reliable. Hey, little one. Yes, I got your tail. Yeah. Okay. But Dame Patience says, perhaps I should start playing LOTRO in French to boost my learning it with Duolingo. Well, that would be diving into the deep end, but I wish you all the... Now, something like Yule, where you have nothing necessarily new, but all the language would be different, that could be a very interesting way to do it, because you have that repetition. You know what it's supposed to say, and so you can just see how it is saying it. And I found when I know the context and even the content of what is being said in Dutch, I have a much higher chance of being able to correlate that to, oh yeah, okay, that I didn't know what this word was, but I know what it's supposed to be, so I can keep reading and I can make progress reading the text. Hey, you. Waha. Come be on stream for a second before you struggle. This is Kato, and she hates being held. It's the worst thing in the world. It's the worst thing in the world. Yeah, I know.
So hard.
Here. Let me reward you for doing the thing that you hate. There you go. Yes, Kevin says, Kitty, protest meow. That's right, fight the power. Well, I'm curious if I can just do that. Hang on a sec. Let's go back to the C# that's writing stuff for the Lua that's writing stuff for the program. Okay. If kvp.key equals fr, then okay, so what are the chances we can just reference that assembly? That'd be pretty cool. Out. Maybe nougat? Alright, this has already gotten more complicated than I wanted it to be. So, we're going to bail on that idea, but it's definitely something I want to have in as a possibility for later. can tell you've been called so cute. It's true. Okay. So instead, we will just continue. And in fact, let's go ahead and move this on down. Okay. Any of these that have numbers, we're going to come back to. Fascinating. It's always interesting when there's multiple versions of the same text, but as long as they all look the same, we're going to call that good. And I'll just take the last one. Alright, Ted Ives is moved by your gift. Yes. Let the stuffing begin. Okay, the rest of these are numbers, so we're going to come back to them. And then we'll just circle back around. So, in the spirit of Yule. What on earth? So, l'esprit de Yule. And that looks pretty consistent across the 4 different instances of it. So, l'esprit de Yule. Awesome. Moving them off. In fact, we'll continue on here. Circuler. All right. Okay. The abominable snow beasts. Okay. Cold as ice. Interesting. Is that mortal frigid? Tell me what this means. Deadly cold. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. A little poetic. Making mischief. Making mischief, making mischief. La la la. Tidying up. Yes. Stuffing the stuffed. So even though we can't translate everything in all of this display text, we can at least get something. So take isn't the right verb for French, obviously, but take the quest that in French is circulaise from, and if we can go ahead and translate garde Kemper, for instance. Garde Kemper, okay, that's easy. Then at least the quest name and who you're turning it into are in French, even though the rest of it's in English. That feels like an improvement. A French person might not think so. I was going a little bit fast there, and I thought I saw something I didn't want to translate. That was right. And that just raises the point that I should go ahead and finish this off. So when we don't have an exact string match, what's the next solution? Well, if you've got the LOTRO companion data files, then we should be able to search for that in all of them. And usually that's a pretty good starting point. So we're looking for that key. And we can even document it here. And if we find that key, we're going to find the French version of it. Right now, we're not looking for each instance of this text to update any sort of a counter, although that's certainly something I'm interested in doing. But we are just looking for the last one. So we know 8 of 8 is the maximum. So we go ahead and say 8 and 8. But that actually gives us a clue of what the rest of these could look like. So I'm going to yoink those out. And if it's got a slash in it, we'll go ahead and pull that on over. And these probably would look the same. Where did I put it? With current and max. Not necessarily, but probably. And if it does, that gives us a little bit of a shortcut. So there's your max. There's our current. And let's see if that helps. It did not. Oh well. That's why we did it over there for a test. Clearance says, did you think about color coding quests and persons in the quick guide? Not yet. I think that could be interesting, but some people just can't make out differences in color that well, and so it would have to be something that is a nice to have, but not an essential part of the plugin. Now, just calling out all names in one color and all quests in another color, that I could get behind. But I don't have any ideas on colors yet. Emran says, I have no idea what you were actually doing, but it looks impressive. Well, first of all, this is Lord of the Rings Online, the game, yay. It has plugins, and one way you can write plugins is badly, which is what I do. Now, what we're doing right now is we are trying to translate as much as we can of the Yule Quick Guide and Festival Buddy into French. And I don't speak French, but I do have references. So we know that that is going to be 8, and that is going to be 8. Okay, so picked up dirty dishes. We can do the same thing, which is we know what the key is. And we can go ahead and use that to find the French version of this. All right, clean up liquid spills. That's the key. It says, that was my thought. One color for persons, one for quests. But it was just a thought if I should do that. I think... I would not hard code it in. I think I would want to call a function like colorize quest or colorize NPC, because I would want those colors to be changeable by the user. If not this release, then eventually. And hard coding it into the text means it can't be changed. But if you highlight in the text, this is the name of the NPC. Let me, instead of just talking about it, let me show you what I mean. So if this was highlight NPC Mara Sandy Downs, if it looked like this, and same thing, if it was highlight quest, and we sprayed a Yule. So this is what it would need to look like. So we have some word, and then we say, okay, this thing is going to be a quest, and the default behavior of this function would be do nothing. But function highlight quest. Return, and you could just do, RGB equals red, right? And then quest, and then the end of the RGB. And then highlight NPC could be the same NPC, but instead of red, it's green. Something like that. Let's see how badly I messed it up. Ooh. Why isn't it accepting RGB? Oh, for one thing, I didn't use a pound symbol, or octothorpe if you're into your old terms. There we go. Okay. So that's what we would need to do, because that way the thing that is here can instead look at a the user customizable value. And we saw in Opaque Quest Tracker, it's super easy to give a color picker. This is a library available on LOTROinterface.com for the user to just pick a color visually. It would be even possible to let them type it in, although this does not. So that's what it would have to be, Tellurian, and I would say don't worry about it. If I decided to do it, I'll just do all of it in one go. Agatha says you could probably list some code from Reminders, which has user customizable color coding. I may have gotten inspiration from Reminders when I was doing Opaque Quest Tracker as far as the customizable color. Dakari says, what programming language is this? Lord of the Rings Online plugins have to be coded in Lua. Lua is a scripting language. You can see more about it at lua.org. And it's commonly used as a scripting language. In fact, I believe World of Warcraft uses Lua for its add-ons. Factorio uses Lua for its plugins. So Lua is a great language to know if you're interested in doing plugins for games. There are raiders from Jules Quest. Hello and welcome. We're just busy writing some plugins, or in this case, translating some plugin text for the Yule Festival Buddy Quick Guide, making it a little bit more friendly for French users who maybe don't want to be reading as much English as they are right now. Okay, so Tellurian, this is what I think it would look like if we did this. And in fact, the quoting of the quest suddenly gets less necessary. So you could see if the quoting were being done in here, it would still look the same. But then we could decide, you know what, quoting the quest, doesn't matter so much with the color change. Or that could be even a toggleable option. Tellurian said, I thought it would be some work additionally to the translation stuff, and it makes reading the source a bit harder. It makes finding text harder because you can't just say, find the text, take L'Esprit de Yule from Mara Sandy Downs, because you have all of this interstitial stuff. That isn't to say it isn't possible. It would definitely be possible to, instead of doing it like this, say, you know what, if you find L'Esprit de Yule, this text here, If you find single quote that, single quote, go ahead and add this in afterward. That would be possible. But I think this would be a way to do it, right? This would be a straightforward way to do it. Is just call it out inline. What is a text or request? What is an NPC? Because you run the risk if Mara Sendown somehow appears somewhere else. Like, would you want to code her red if you're not actively talking to her? Maybe coding her that color means that you should be talking to her, or green. Sorry. And if her name shows up as green and you're not supposed to be talking to her, she's just a reference. Is that a problem? I don't know. I mean, there's ways to work around it. But I think the color coding is interesting. Maybe not these colors, but the idea is very interesting. I would want them less dark for one thing. So let's see. That's full red. But if we went ahead and just said, like, I don't know, 5555 for everything else, let's soften them up a little bit. Maybe. I'm not convinced about those colors. That I could do. I'll think about that. Yeah, Delirian, I'm glad you just sent me the data. Adding the colors is interesting. If it doesn't happen today, it might still happen in the near future. Because I like the idea of it for just like pulling out what's important. Oh, what the heck? I'll leave that for right now. But these functions obviously would not want to go here, and eventually would want to give the user some sort of customizability over it. Okay. There's more numbers. Let's do more numbers. Cleaned up liquid spills. All right, we were grabbing that key. Awesome. Oh, we have the key. All right. And in French, that is this. Darren, absolutely. Perhaps highlight quest could add the quotes if no color is selected. That might be a really nice way to do it, is you still have a way to call it out. But if color is happening, then the quotes are less necessary. And doing it in a function instead of inline hard-coded makes all of these things possible, because then you can make a single change and it affects everything across all festivals instead of just a single quest guide for one language for one festival. Okay, cleaned up reeking garbage. Super important. Well, that looks Russian. Okay, there we go. Now, Tillerian, you said you tested your changes and they seem to work in German. So if I only have the time, I'm already a little over. So if I have time to do any testing tonight, I'll be focusing on the French side of things. Not because German isn't important, but because you've already laid pretty good eyes on it. Okay, baking bread. Last time we were in Paris, we made a special attempt to get some gluten-free French bread for Little Redhead. I don't know if it was everything that was dreamed of and more, but yeah, it seemed like it was worth the time. Oof. Well, the redhead says it was worth the time. Awesome. There's actually a couple different likely places, if you ever are visiting Paris, that seems to be catering towards people who can't digest gluten. We did not even have time to try them all. This burst wintry weather. All right, that gets us the key. That's fair. Little Redhead points out that they're not so happy with the area we stayed in this time, so it was nice to visit the area we stayed in the first time, much quieter and enjoyable. That's fair. Plus, that place was closed the first time we tried to go there because it was summer holidays. Jerks. All right, collected berries. Dillian says, just had some problems with the emote buttons. Emotes containing umlauts seem to be problematic. I'm really sorry to hear that because it feels like it's working on my machine, but it could just be an issue that it works on my machine but not other people's. So let me make a note about that. If I don't still have it, it's really easy to just write a little program that just goes through and finds those characters and replaces them. So, okay. Mandrival reports that special characters AG with umlauts aren't behaving for things like emotes. Replace with the backslash versions. Okay. Lillian says, oh, and another thought. Did you think about emotes in the theater to fail? What a great idea. Expand theater emotes to add in at least one failure option. I was in there the other day playing the villain, and I did have to guess that doing a /cry emote would fail, and it did. It's possible to kind of be like, oh, okay, I'm laughing, I'm being suspicious, whatever. Crying at the audience probably won't work, but it would be nice to have a surefire way to do it. So definitely a great idea. I noticed that. Okay, collected berries is this key. And getting the French. Well, that is odd. Because of the way the Snow Beast quest works, those are 3 distinct keys instead of being a single key with variables, I suppose. Let's take a look at that. We got some packages in the mail today in boxes, so it is a good day for the cats. Noise is being made. Torian says, they think there are 3 types of emote: one that contributes to the good, one that contributes to the bad, and one that's not contributing at all. I thought it was just either it was good and contributed to your part, or it counts as bad. Like if you do nothing, I think you still get fruit lobbed at you. And but it doesn't count towards the deed. But if you do an emote and it's not good, is it bad? But are all emotes that are not good bad? Okay. I will have to do some research. Note. It might be that not all emotes that are not good are bad. Dave Hypatia, you can test it via the deed, use different emotes, and look at the counter in deed. Okay, Tillerian and Little Redhead both think that if it's a purchased emote or earned emote, it doesn't count for anything. Purchased/earned emotes don't count either way. E.g. Thrumpet. Silly cats. However, as long as you have a bad emote, I wouldn't be trying to do an exhaustive list, or the entire screen would be covered with a window with emotes. I do think, though, that it could be neat, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who uses the Festival Buddy, it could be neat to have... Oh, yes. Oh, no, I see what the problem would be, Tellurian. It's not that the umlauts themselves are a problem, it's that in order for special characters to not be corrupted when they're made part of a shortcut, you have to construct the shortcut in a specific way. This is the same shortcut special character bug that deed tracker had. There is a fix. So, let's get distracted for a minute. Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, and we might actually bring the stream to a close after I bring up this. Because we're getting late here, and I don't want to keep you all night. But let's go ahead and get that in here, and then we're going to go ahead and open this up in Visual Studio Code window. Open folder, and we're going to grab that folder. Okay, so in the deed tracker window, when you complete a deed, there's a little alias here to share that. And the deed has special characters, and this can happen in the English client as well, because things like the Wardens of Numinos, I believe, have an accent in their name. So that's where this comes in. So, deed completion window, shortcut. Fantastic. Hey, this function works around this documented error. Thank you, Garen. So, there's a bug using the shortcut constructor where if you supply the data string, wall of Numinos, if you use a shortcut like that where the data is placed as a constructor arg, it comes across in chat as mangled. But if you use set data, instead it works. So what we can assume is that we're doing it the wrong way, and we can see that even in the French with what in English I would call reference, probably not the right pronunciation, and we can see the alias that's been gibberished. It's no good. At least it's consistent with how it's corrupted the E accent, though. So what we want to do is assume that we are using a LOTRO shortcut in Festival Buddy. Yeah. There we go. Emote. We can see we're setting this shortcut to a shortcut that's being instantiated with V, which we can assume is evoking the problem here. So if we instead, we make a shortcut, we set the type, we set the data, and then we use it, and we don't have to have a function for this, we're just using it as a reference here. So local shortcut equals, we need a turbine UI shortcut that is bare bones, just bare like that. Shortcut set type, and we know that was the first parameter here. And shortcut set data, and we know we wanted that to be V. Then we can go ahead and say set shortcut to this thing that we just created in a roundabout way. Let's actually give that a try right now. We're going to unload. We're going to load Festival Buddy. And if we hover over this, we can see it works. Well, it's linked correctly anyway. The alias doesn't actually exist because I'm not actually logged in as the French client. I'm logged in as the English client, but lying to plugin. But you can see. Dave, my page says it's empty here. Well, this is Treebeard, so there are some people running around in here. Oh, there's like 2 hobbits. It's full of hobbits. That's why you can't see them. They're stealthy. Okay, so Little Redhead pointed out you'd need 3. Yeah, if you wanted 1 column for good, 1 column for bad, and 1 column for nothing, I guess so. Is the nothing the same as? Sorry, are the emotes that are neither good nor bad, is that the same as doing nothing? Because I'm not sure why you would need that 3rd column otherwise. Okay.
Why would you do that? Like,
Well, no. In chat, Little Redhead said you'd need 3.
Yeah.
But maybe that was talking about something else. I don't know.
You need 3 bad emotes.
You need 3 bad emotes. Oh, they have to be different.
Like the 3 good have to be different.
Do they?
So,
Do the emotes have to be different for them to be free to get credit? Hang on. What's going on here? No, crisis social. Don't hide completed deeds. Great. And then villain. Successfully used an appropriate emote twice in a row as Gandalf during a single performance. I don't think they have to be different. But I haven't done it recently enough to know for sure. So if anyone has and knows if they have to be different or not, let me know. That would explain why there's 3 in the column, though, certainly. Okay, fair enough. Better to have 3, so make 2 columns of 3 with a label for each. Good/bad. Or maybe success and failure, I don't know. I'll need labels for those. I'll look at the quest text for that. Zillian says doing yes for Gandalf is good. Doing /no is a wrong emote. I'm hoping that the wiki will have some of this documented, or that someone will have called it out. Okay, awesome. So we saw the bug here. This is the same bug, I think, Tellurian, that is catching you out. So for today, if you wanted the fix for how to do that, that is in main win, and that's line 1081. And the QS emote set shortcut needs to look like this if any of the characters that are being passed are outside of the basic ASCII range. You fixed it on your end? Awesome. Were you doing it in parallel, or had you already fixed it? Because yeah, it's fixable with the / thing, but it's nice not to have to do that. Okay. Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what. We've been here for a while. We've made some really good progress. My goal is to release an update to Festival Buddy with updated French and German before the next stream, so we can move on to other streams. Lillian says, exactly the way you showed it without knowing it was buggy. Awesome. I think she wants to push the flap of the box down, but it's springy. Can I zoom? I don't think I can zoom. I'll slide it out of the way while I wrap things up here, though. I don't know. Maybe I can zoom. Camera control. Oh. Well, that didn't help. Oh well. It's probably possible. Okay. So, we've made some really good progress. This is not knowing French, or really German. This is how I did some minimal localization for the Midsummer, where it was still in English, but it was take this German thing from this person who's also the German name. And it's not a perfect solution, but it's definitely better. And we could run the basic grammatical formula of take X from Y through an auto-translator like Google Translate and get probably something that's pretty close to what it should be for those people. That's a worthwhile thing to do, because if it's wrong, it's at least hopefully closer. And if people are committed enough to say, oh, this is wrong, can you please fix it? That's a good sign that they want to use the plugin. Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and bring this to a close. I think the cat is out of the box. Literally out of the box. Awesome. So this was really cool. We got a lot of progress done, lots of good questions in chat. Tellurian, thanks for being awesome about submitting translations. That's super useful. Yes, Elvis has left the building. And Moobot says Corsairs of Umbar is live, so that's cool too. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and be done for today. Effie says, thank you for the stream, you had fun. Awesome, glad you could join us. I believe the next stream on the schedule is Adventuring Back to Rohan with mailing at 9 p.m. server time, but it is a bit of a holiday week or two here, so do check to see if anyone has committed to being there or has canceled beforehand, if possible. I know, for instance, Court of the Rings had his last stream last Friday for the year, and he'll pick it up again in January. Little Redhead and I are having a quiet time at home this holiday season, so we'll probably be back next Tuesday for more Life Beyond the Shire and more plugging along.
And Druids is doing
Oh yes, Druid's Fire is doing a. Hang on, I want to get it right. Marathon on Christmas Day, I think. Special LOTRO marathon from noon until 6 p.m. Eastern or server time on Christmas Day on Druid's Fire's personal channel. Everyone's welcome to stop in. And she has goodies to give away, and it's just going to be a good time for people who are not busy doing other things on the 25th of December. Then Dave My Page says, thanks for the stream. Have a great holidays. We will try. It's going to be a nice, quiet time alone with the cats. Okay. Well, that's everything we're going to cover today, then. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you all here next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right. Bye-bye now.